I've had a chat. Okay, we need a few solid laps here to help us calculate a good race strategy. Program complete and a job well done. We got some excellent data with that run, so come on back to the garage and I can take you through the numbers. Confirmed, we'll receive you at the end of this lap. Okay, this is a quali sim. We've estimated the times our closest rivals will be doing, so that's what we need to beat. get the data we needed on that run. You might want to give it another go. I'm afraid the front left tyre's gone, the rubber has shredded. Okay, we've got a shredded tyre, we need you in now. Box, box, box. Okay, we've only got 1 lap of fuel remaining.
What an incredible practice session that was. But the fun doesn't stop here. Now here's something we haven't said for a little while. Welcome along to qualifying in China. After a few years' absence from the calendar, it is great to be back here. But just who is going to put their car on pole? So it's all about speed in today's sprint, not very many laps and no chance to get ahead on strategy. Who here today has the raw skill to take them to the top? We're here in the Yangtze River Delta today, home of the 16 corners that make up the Shanghai International Circuit. 54% of this 3.3-mile lap is taken at full throttle, and we'll be getting up to speeds of around 200 miles per hour with DRS assistance down the back straight, before the cars break into the tight hairpin at turn 14. Off the back of a fantastic qualifying session, it's time to see how our starting grid looks for today's sprint. Ace lines up on pole position, and Max Verstappen lines up alongside. As we continue through the rest of the grid today, we have Norris, Fernando Alonso, Leclerc, Perez, Russell, Sainz, Oscar Piastri, Hamilton, Tsunoda, Ricciardo, Stroll, Ocon, Albon, Hülkenberg, Bottas, Gasly, Magnussen and Logan Sargent. Which of these drivers will get pole position today? We'll soon find out. And alongside me today is a man who needs no introduction, but I'll try anyway. It's Ant Davidson. Well, they say that a change is as good as a rest, and whilst there's not much rest on show in the sprint format today, there's definitely a change to what we're usually seeing on the track. As we all know, every single driver wants to know what's required of them, and in the case of this driver, I think things are pretty stable at the moment. They're doing what the team require.
Well, that's the thing, as a driver, it's easy to feel like you're the individual, it's all about you, and you want to further your career the best you can, but you have to have the team hat on as well and play the team game, work with your teammate as best you can. It's not an easy balance to figure out.
Okay, here we go. I know what you can do. Don't let me down. Okay, DRS will be enabled this lap. You can use it when you're within 1 second of the car ahead and in the DRS zone. Great work, that's a new fastest lap of the race. Gap to your teammate behind, 11.4 seconds. They're on fresh mediums. They're in 18th. And the time last lap, 1 minute 42.1. Okay, you've just started the final lap of the race. Final lap.
Nice one. Very lovely drive. On to the next one.
Okay, good job, mate. Really, really well done. That was a fantastic drive. Bring it home.
Well, that's an end to the sprint action. Next up, we'll set the grid for the Grand Prix. So we'll see you next time. Now here's something we haven't said for a little while. Welcome along to qualifying in China. After a few years' absence from the calendar, it is great to be back here. But just who is going to put their car on pole? It's time again then for Formula One in Shanghai. Northwest of the thriving city of over 24 million people is a circuit that first featured in the championship calendar back in 2004. It played host to Formula One's 1000th Grand Prix back in 2019. We start a lap here at Shanghai with the long, difficult right-handers of turns 1 and 2, the first of 16 corners that make up this 3.3-mile circuit. The incredibly long back straight provides the best passing opportunity of the lap, with speeds in excess of 200 miles per hour before we head into the braking zone of turn 14. So with the race not far away from starting, here's what today's grid rundown looks like. Ace lines up on pole position, edging out Max Verstappen, who'll start from P2. Considering the rest of the grid, we have Norris, Fernando Alonso, Oscar Piastri, Sainz, Leclerc, Hamilton, Russell, Perez, Tsunoda, Stroll, Ricciardo, Gasly, Albon, Magnussen, Hülkenberg, Bottas, Ocon, and Logan Sargent. It's almost time for those 5 red lights to go out then. Let's see who can prevail today. And striding into our commentary box to join us today, the man, the myth, the legend, Anthony Davidson. As we all know, every single driver wants to know what's required of them. And in the case of this driver, I think things are pretty stable at the moment, that they're doing what the team require.
But that's the thing, as a driver, it's easy to feel like you're the individual. It's all about you. And, you want to further your career the best you can, but you have to have the team hat on as well and play the team game, work with your teammate as best you can. It's not an easy balance to figure out.
Okay, DRS is now available. We're approaching the pit window and you're going to be on mediums. Okay, so we're leading our teammate by 15.4 seconds. They're on fresh softs. They're in 19th place. Time last lap, 1:42.0. Understood, stopping this lap. You're leading the pack, that's P1. Alonso behind you now. Okay, they're on old softs. And your pit window opens in 2 laps time. And 11 laps to go. Okay, be aware, the grip levels are going to start falling away soon. In this lap, push now. Okay, we can take you this lap. Okay, mate, right, we've got some clear track in front of us, so let's make best use of it and make the next lap a quick one. You got this. Be aware the car behind has newer tyres. Car behind on newer tyres. You know what to do. Remember, box this lap. Keep an eye on your distance to the speed limit line as you approach and make sure you don't speed. Okay, don't worry about that target for now. Let's just focus on this pit stop. Okay, off we go, back into the race. Perfect job from you and the crew there, mate. We're delighted with that. Up to speed now, let's get some heat into those tyres. You might experience some understeer now that you're in the wake of the car ahead. Try to get past as soon as possible. Valtteri is in for his stop. That's 8th place, you're in 8th place. That's Gasly ahead. They're on old mediums. Ocon behind. Less than a second separates you. They're on old mediums. Okay, gap to leader, 12.4 seconds. Look after these tyres now. We want to finish the race on this compound. Okay, 7 laps to go. Okay, mate, right, that front wing damage is going to hurt us. We've really got to look after it now. Let's put everything into protecting that front wing, please. Okay, gap to the car in front, 1.6 seconds. Russell is in the pits. Okay, you've got P3, well done. Ricciardo ahead. They're on old mediums. Gasly's behind you. They're on old mediums. Our gap to first place, 11.6 seconds. That was our last stop. No more scheduled pit stops. Let's go. All right, 6 laps to go now. Okay, nice work. Really good job with that target, mate. Gap to your teammate behind, 29.7 seconds. Okay, this is your final lap of the race.
Nice one. Very lovely drive. On to the next one.
Oh, superb driving. That is the race win, my friend. Well done.
It's victory in Shanghai, and what a victory it is after an incredible Grand Prix.
And that's 2 wins in a row now. It's the start of potentially something special, but they can't get ahead of themselves just yet. It's a long way to go.
So here they come now, out onto the podium. It's thrilling to see this team go toe-to-toe with the best in the sport and come out on top. What a superb victory for the Sauber team. It's been an absolutely wild weekend of Formula One action, and I can't wait to see what's next.